We have Dr. Michael Kurr with me here from Boehringer Ingelheim, and Michael and I are just going to have a conversation, right? This is on a Friday morning. He's given up his spare time. He could be doing something so much more fun, but here he is. So, Michael, it'd be great to get an introduction from you and find out a little bit more about it.
So first of all, thank you for the invite, Gaurav. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. It's early August. It should be high summer in Germany. When I look out of the window, it's freaking dark. It's very cold and it's raining cats and dogs. So what a wonderful time. What a wonderful way to spend your time and making a little bit of a podcast here with you. So I guess we are supposed to speak a little bit about the next Pharma Summit, right? But before getting there, let me introduce myself. I'm Michael, as you mentioned. I'm working for Boehringer Ingelheim International in the corporate headquarters. However, I want to call out that I'm expressing my own views here, and I'm not talking on behalf of my employer. Yeah? But my accountability in Boehringer is running a global services organization, which is supporting the Boehringer business with everything commercial operations and medical affairs operations. And the way this model works is to try to centralize, standardize, and harmonize business supporting activities, business operations activities, to make them more efficient, to drive the quality, to speed up turnaround times, and ultimately, of course, to drive down costs. Yeah? At the root of this concept is always economies of scale and scope, which is a decades-old concept. We know it from our university days, of course. It's worth revisiting because I believe these kind of principles and concepts are getting more important moving forward. So that's what I'm doing. I try Boehringer to help doing more with less, which means transformation and changing the way of working is always at the very heart of what I'm doing. Before joining Boehringer, end of 2019, I was almost 9 years with Novartis, mostly in the corporate headquarters in Basel, where I was busy with a very similar kind of journey, where Novartis took a similar decision that Boehringer took lately, very early in 2011 already. So this is how I came into this topic. Before joining Novartis, I spent a couple of years in consulting. Not strategic consulting, but rolling up your sleeves, operational consulting, busy with business process, re-engineering, restructuring, change management topics. No PowerPoints, rather workshopping and really making sure that things are actually changing. And this is why literally my entire professional life now, which is more than 15 years in global pharma, but extending many more years through consulting, is dealing with transformation, is dealing with change, with dealing with changing the way companies are operating, hopefully to the better. Yeah? This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm passionate about.
Wonderful. So I've had the pleasure of working with you not once, but twice. Once at Novartis in when I was in the oncology team, and then obviously at Boehringer we worked extensively together while you're global lead. And I think one of the bits that I always find is that, there was such success because actually so many people were motivated to be change makers, right? And I think that's one of the keys, even now with all the discussion around AI, and I'm sure we'll dive into that. Michael, so everyone knows what you do for Boehringer. What do you do for fun in terms of from a personal perspective? We'd like the listeners to get an idea of that as well.
Well, on a more private note, I'm a proud dad of still 2 young ones. I have a 10-year-old boy and an 8-year-old daughter. Happily married, of course, stable family situation, so to say. Where I spend most of my free time is actually on the golf course with my son. He's doing this since he's 4 years old. I joined him 3 years later, so he was the first one in the family, which is kind of weird, followed by Daddy. And it's actually this year where he officially took over my handicap score. So he's now 3 strokes. Is stroke the right term? I guess so. He's better than me now, officially. So,
wow.
10 years old, he's going full steam ahead, which fills me with pride and a lot of joy. And this is really my favorite free time.
Wow. So we're going to have to get him down to Wentworth soon, and he can play on the PGA tour. So that's the retirement plan sorted, then Michael.
I guess this is happening earlier, right? So maybe we can push him a little faster in an accelerated way, and I go just managing him. That would be wonderful.
There you go. So I think the employee perks could be a golf course in Ingelheim soon. Yeah, that'd be nice, huh?
Yeah.
So Michael, I guess what we could do is, it's been a while actually, right? We were in Croatia in May, and a fantastic event, fantastic speakers, and I was having a quick look at the league table as well, and obviously your session was one of the best sessions there, and absolutely outstanding. In terms of what you got as a reception as well. What I would look at is, what are your thoughts now? Because it's been a couple of months, right? A few months after Next. What is it that you sort of took away from it? Overall, what did you think of the event? And if there's anything you'd change about it?
So for me personally, I think the next Pharma Summit that Dario and his team have established, I believe 5 years back, is one of those outstanding events where really forward-thinking industry leaders are coming and sharing perspectives and ideas. It's not like that super large-scale event, which makes it very anonymous, so to say. It's still kind of cozy community building. Also, the way Dario is bringing the people together and creating a positive buzz and emotions into this event is really exceptional. I was actually this year there for the 3rd time in a row being a speaker. Yeah, so I'm almost part of the inventory now. Let's see if this continues. This year's presentation, I have to say, I have invested a lot of time and passion into it. It paid off in the end, but I'm not sure if I can do this every year. Yeah, so let's see how this is going. But again, this event, also the location in Dubrovnik is exceptional. Yeah, the surrounding is just perfect, and which makes the entire event like a really, really great experience, where there's a very good balance between good time to share with industry peers in a more informal way, and the sessions on stage in the audience, really having time to connect and having Q&A and exchange with those speakers and the other industry peers. And also a lot of interesting vendors and agencies are showing up there. This makes it really valuable in terms of time spent. I really like what Dario has built. There's a real Next community, I almost sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those events for me that lives on post the event, because there is so much content that comes pre-event, and then there's so much content that comes post-event. And something around the vendors as well, is that it feels like they can just mingle with pharma quite easily, and the events in the evening, I think, are probably the highlight. If people haven't been, I think it's a fantastic way to, especially for procurement teams, right? This is a great idea. Just get on the dance floor and let's see what everyone's made of. No, I really enjoyed it as well, and I think for me it's probably 4 years I've gone back to back. I have probably been media partner for the last 3 years with Dario. And what's wonderful is to see the story, right, with Petra as well. And she is absolutely, as much as part of this as Dario. And one of the things that we've seen is the growth. It used to be a few hundred people in the room, and I think we were touching close to 500 in the last event. So, watching this growing up, as you said, the community, that feel is very much there. I guess the second part, and this is probably so subjective, but I'm going to ask you anyway. The sessions, I think we had about 36 sessions, 38 sessions in 2 days, so super packed agenda. And it's always hard to do this. But what were the sort of standout sessions for you, and why, I guess?
So there were a couple of sessions that for me really were standing out, and I will try to summarize this a little bit. Let me start with the ladies first. Yeah, for me, one of the standing out presentations was the one of Alyssa Fenoglio, formerly Teva. She was talking about the human algorithm. So her presentation was about AI and the deployment of AI. What made this specifically interesting for me was that she kind of counterintuitively was framing this AI journey up in a very human-centric way, saying how AI is actually cultivating the people-centric organization, right? This, at first glance, seems counterintuitive, but the way she has created a human-centered framework for AI deployment and AI business models that was really resonating well. So 4 key pillars that she created was she framed the culture and capability area as the code of the human algorithm. She was framing technology up in a way that it can produce intent and enable intent, right? Then designs, tech designs that are made for humans, but that are delivering really value for the business also. And lastly, the 4th pillar was that she said trust is the foundational infrastructure of this people-centric organization. And for all these 4 different pillars, she framed it up with real data, made it tangible. She presented a couple of use cases to really make it real what she meant. So for me, this was one of the outstanding ones. What do you think about that presentation?
Yeah, again, Alicia, we've known for a number of years, right, Michael? And just watching that presentation for me was about the growth, because I remember seeing Alicia's first presentations, which were kind of, centric on Teva and how they were doing some wonderful work and how she was leading some of that discussion internally and the capabilities. But suddenly that switch over to the trust element, which seems to be the cornerstone of most AI, right? Because I speak to so many people who say, look, we've built this over the weekend. We think it's fantastic. I'm like, yeah, you'll never pass IT SOC, right? Like this, there's a trust piece, there's a security piece. And I think she spoke to that. I think she also spoke to a lot of people's fears around AI, eloquently, because the trust is important, but you're taking people on the journey of this, right? In terms of the change management that's required, but also the mindset shift. I thought she spoke to that incredibly well. I'm a fan. So, Alicia, you're fantastic. And if you haven't seen her presentation, please do check it out on Next Pharma Summit's YouTube videos. I think the whole presentation's there, courtesy of Dario and Petra and the team.
And one thing that I would add here is also when you think about it, if this AI journey, the generative AI, the agentic AI is really done in the right way, it can take away a lot of the busy work, a lot of the grunt work that people really do not necessarily enjoy doing. And with this, it probably actually enables a more human-centric organization where people spend more time on topics that they actually enjoy doing. Yeah, so there's a big opportunity in here also, but we need to get that right. Yeah, that's the challenge for the future, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's in one of the other sessions as well, Michael. I think, we were talking about how people used to coordinate themselves using, compasses, and then came the sort of maps, and then from the maps came the A to Zs, and from the A to Zs came, Google Maps, and from Google Maps came thing. But we're all still, going places, we're still doing things, we're still, it's just more efficient. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I don't think AI is something to be feared. Any other sessions that sort of stood out to you from that? Because there's so much in that content.
That's a perfect segue into my second highlight here. It's the famous Marco Andre. He's using these kind of examples to say, no, there's nothing wrong with making your life easy by deploying AI, because sometimes there's a notion of, you are lazy because you do this with generative AI instead of sitting there, writing it yourself, and so on. Who from us is still sitting there with a paper map in the car to guide the driver where to go? I know these times still, right?
Yeah.
So
Remember, it was F4, yeah.
yeah, exactly, the quadrants there. So Marco Andre definitely standing out of the crowd of speakers. I got to know him, I guess, 2024 at the Next Pharma Summit, where he presented his "The Hype is Gone, It is Time to Grieve Now," which was already an interesting framework to frame up the topic. But then he took it really to the next level with his 7 cardinal sins of AI. And it's not only about the content, but the way he is speaking, the way he comes prepared, the way he's mixing up the PowerPoint with the video, the audio, the AI sequences that he created himself, and so on, which makes it full experience, I would say. It's not only a speech, it's a full, how do you say that? It's a full festival, a full experience. Yeah, I guess experience is
It is
the
an
right
experience,
way.
for sure.
So this is a must see on the Next Pharma Summit video that is made available.
Yeah, I think I've been lucky enough to see that presentation not once but twice, and they've been slightly different as well, right? Like he hasn't used the same presentation, he's adapted it. And you know, we're friends, right? Like in terms of he's very willing to share that he has grown into being the presenter that he is. So if anybody wants to look at how to be an excellent presenter, look at Marco Andre's presentations. But also know that there are moments when, you know, he's gone to a room, he's got his headphones on, and he's listening to his pump up music just before he gets on stage. I'm giving away all his secrets. These are all available in the public domain. But he literally is a star performer, and it's someone that, you know, we're very, very lucky to actually have in the industry, because what he's able to do in a world which commands content, he commands attention. And I think that is incredible skill to have. So Marco, you know, fantastic. Thank you for kind of inspiring all of us. Was there anything in terms of something new that you learned, Michael, from Next, which I guess, you know, you're always on top of stuff that's happening, and obviously lots of vendors coming to you with white papers, and it's hard in the day job to kind of consume stuff. But these events are always good to get a snapshot of what everybody else is doing as well. Was there anything that sort of stood out to you, or, you know, you said, oh, you know, like a light bulb moment?
So for me, and I mentioned that also in the intro to my speech, which was on day 2 only, one of my key takeaways from day 1 was that really there is a new spin to all this AI topic. We have kind of all accepted that this technology is there, that it's working, that it's evolving in a massively accelerated way, which big pharma organizations specifically have no chance to keep up with, which is opening an entire new topic for me where we really need to look into it, right? Because we have an obligation to use this technology to better serve patients in the end. Yeah. And we see this running ahead full steam, and we compare this with where we are as large pharma organization. I would dare to say that there's a little bit of a disconnect. Yeah? And I guess that we need to think about it much, much more deeply. And let's get to this in a moment. But for me, what was really good to see, and I touched on it already a little bit, Alisa was centering the human into the middle of the discussion, but also Carlos Eid in his presentation. He was talking about transformations, AI transformations that are not necessarily positive for people. So this is why people are not really embracing these transformations. So we need to put the human first in these presentations so that we can really make the best use of this technology. Otherwise, these transformations are a threat, and often they are, let's be fair, yeah? Often they are a threat. They are a threat to workplaces, they are a threat to people in organizations, to their families, and so on. So there's not only positive. So we have an obligation to try to figure out how we can use this not only for the best, in the best interest for patients, but also for the own employees of the organizations we are working for. So that was an interesting spin to the overall the topic, a little less technical, a little more almost looking into the society kind of effects that this might have. Yeah. And I think that's a very important one.
Yeah. And I think, historically, I don't know whether you agree or not, I think pharma has been a bit of a laggard in terms of an industry, in terms of adoption.
Never confirm this. I would never confirm this.
You will never confirm, neither deny. But if you buy him a beer in his hometown at Ulm, he may say something else. But in terms of where we're at, I think pharma is getting better at embracing technology for sure. In terms of wanting to use AI, I think there's a lot of hype around AI. I saw a stat recently from Johnson and Johnson, which spoke about how many experiments that they were doing, and how quickly they had to give redundancy to stuff. Then you look at JP Morgan and what it's saying around so many AIs would fail security tests as soon as it was put into infrastructure. That actually it may look fantastic, but does it work with our regulated environments? And is that the right modus? So I guess my simple question to you is, where do you see AI being used in the workplace for, not necessarily Boehringer, but, in pharma? And where do you see those use cases actually transpiring in the next sort of 18 to 24 months? Because we can always talk about technology into the future, and lots of companies out, we've got a 5-year roadmap. That's fantastic. But actually, the companies that move fast, I think, have an advantage in certain cases.
But exactly to this point, Gaurav, this 5-year roadmap and so on, I think really these concepts are concepts of the past. Yeah. These are not working anymore. We don't even know what will be possible next month, let alone in 5 years' time. And this is where the interesting topic comes from, which I started to touch on already. How do we manage this ever-growing gap between what is possible and how we are deploying it? And I give you an example. When I look into these RFI, RFP processes in large pharma organizations with the intent of figuring out a platform, a tool to fix a problem that is there, once you have run through this bureaucracy of a process, it takes you RFI, RFP at least 6 months down the line. The tool might be obsolete the moment you have issued the RFP, right?
Yeah.
But what does it mean? Does this mean that you need to build an ecosystem of trusted partners around you that you can collaborate with more fluidly so that you are more agile in testing things? I really believe the future will see a big renaissance of the almost forgotten agile concept here. Yeah. How do we organize ourselves around experimenting and learning at scale? Have we really understood how to do this in such a established structure that we typically see in large pharma organizations? This is something I really, also for me in my accountability in this global services environment, where we are operating a lot with RFI, RFPs, because what we are doing is large scale, right? What we are doing need to reach all markets worldwide at some point. So I have these heavy routines and procedures because I need to take a decision on this 1 or 2 global partners that need to become a partner that can help me driving what I need to achieve. All of this is needed currently, but it's going to change. And for me, the question is, what does it exactly mean? How do I enable this kind of high volume experimentation, which I totally believe is needed moving forward to at least keep up somewhat with the pace of change.
Yeah, and I think your experience lends to that. So, when we were at Novartis, we had that discussion around detail aids, and we were talking around the Hyderabad content factory,
Yeah.
piece. And then now at Boehringer, we did digital asset management together, and at that point, we chose a different supplier to what was traditionally being used because we wanted to roll it out in waves and get that. But I think with AI, the challenge is this. Historically, 18 months to technological change. But if you look at OpenAI right now, every 5 months the model is being released. So you're spot on. How do you now, condense the timeline to the RFI to the RFP before the technology becomes obsolete? And the challenge for vendors is also going to be on how quickly can you stay on top of it. What is relevant, what is needed, where is the use case, and where is the shiny object? Because actually, the shiny object can distract you from, lots of things. And if you look at a whole of market discussion, a lot of companies are looking at reducing, costs for traditional agency work with, say, for example, generative AI, where, certain copy can be done or certain, videos can be done for training, and I can talk to this without naming the company. There's one company that's using Synthesia, right? Now, Synthesia's value is not necessarily that it's a Gen AI technology. Synthesia's core value is that it is HIPAA compliant, SOC compliant, and ISO compliant. This is the requirement of technology as well to be able to be seeded within a regulatory environment and essentially, a patient technology stack. Because if something goes wrong in our environments, in a regulated environment, it has massive ramifications. So yes, we go with caution. But the enterprise stuff that you just mentioned is very interesting because I think that is a real challenge for those partners as well to stay on top of what is going on. And that is not easy with every day something else coming out on a different model and a different thing.
So our train of thought currently is, without disclosing anything confidential here, is that we probably have a couple of partners that are giving us and maintaining for us platforms for certain processes that are open enough that you can plug and play different modules that are enabling different tech, different functionalities, right? So you would have this middle layer, which probably is operated by one of these global partners that are stable over time, that are trusted by the pharma organization, but then being modularized and more flexible in the more detailed layer. That might be an element, but that also requires very open architecture, which also pharma is not necessarily a big fan of, right? Because it comes with security risks and all the rest of it. And these risks are real. We know this. Yeah. So this will be very interesting to explore what is possible in a pharma environment. But I guess along these lines, we will see something emerging.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the next 12 to 18 months will be defining, right? Because you have this whole situation. Even yesterday, right? I was reading something around, the most favored nation pricing on drugs, right? Like that has a massive impact in terms of how pharma needs to focus in on, things like improving operational efficiencies, and, technology plays a massive part in that space as well. So I guess, Michael, is there anything that you would say to companies that are going through this digital transformation, they're going through this change, that you feel that they need to be aware of over and above, AI, right? Because a lot of AIs are usually a wrapper around the core technology, yeah. And sometimes that can be a challenge in itself when you're talking about integrations and APIs, etc. Is there anything that they should be aware of when they are looking at AI vendors? Because there is a lot of agencies now also coming in with their own little AI setups, which we're seeing as well.
Well, I guess for the pharma organization, it starts with what is the problem that you want to fix here? Yeah, because implementing AI is not a strategy, it's not even a tactic. You need to sell the problem first and then you need to see what kind of technology might help you. So I have kicked off a big automation and scalability initiative for my organization, so that I will be able to produce probably 10 times more throughput with only doubling in size. Yeah. So this is the kind of ratio, this is the kind of challenge we are looking at. But AI is just one out of many, many options in that toolbox. And depending on what kind of problem you are looking at, you need to pick and choose the right stuff, right? Why would you deploy an agentic AI on something where a simple RPA tool is just good enough? Yeah. So I guess this kind of triaging of putting the right tool to the right problem is absolutely critical. And then probably closing the loop back to also my speech in Dubrovnik, there are some eternal truth in here that come with also tech-enabled transformation, because all of this is requiring people to adapt and change. And this is where always the very similar challenges are coming. And for me, doing this now for more than 15 years in pharma alone, I really feel that our industry at some point in time need to have a little bit of a wake up call to lower the resistance to change, to lower the resistance to transformation. Of course, there's an element of giving security to your people, but there's also an element where pharma is just able to allow itself a lot of churn and waste in the system. Yeah. And if you really want to become more agile as an industry, we need to move beyond that. We need to acknowledge ourselves as one company that is heading in the same direction, and everybody has their role to play. But the level of change management that is also required always is just, I would almost say insane sometimes. And that's not helping with the rapid evolution that we see also in tech, especially in tech.
Yeah, no. And, I guess just to follow up on that, because you are, as you've just said, incredibly experienced in this space. I speak to a lot of young talent that wants to come into this industry and is already in this industry. So they're at some of the junior levels. And, people aspire to be Michael Kerr and they aspire to be Alicia's of this world. What would you say is the sort of future skills that they would need in terms of their scope? Because right now, I'm not being facetious about it. So, my daughter, she'll go and learn about trigonometry, or she will go and learn about something else in school right now, which is around first principles. I don't know how valuable something like that's going to be with AI doing some of that heavy lifting in the future. So what are those skills that if somebody wanted to come to a company like Boehringer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Teva, Chiesi, I can reel them off, right? Because that's the industry. What is it that they need to be successful?
That's probably the $1,000,000 question that you are asking, because it's keeping me busy also being a dad of a 10 and an 8 years old. Yeah, it's still a little more premature, but it's coming fast. Time flies. Yeah. So these questions need to be answered soon. And we are already observing this on the school level. Of course, my son is familiar with ChatGPT. Yeah. Of course, he's doing some of his homework with this technology, which makes his life easy. Teachers are not at all equipped to deal with that. Yeah? There are reactions like, we do not allow ChatGPT, but then how on earth are you governing this guidance? There's no world you can. Yeah. So this is a reality. You need to deal with it. But back to your point, I just read recently an article that was called "Why Also in Future It's Still Relevant to Know How to Code." So, and I find this interesting because I guess what is still needed is you need to have an understanding of how this technology works. What are the foundational principles of this technology, so that you can once assess the outcomes and how reliable these outcomes are, because you know how they have been generated. and you need to also match up the problems to the right tech, as I just elaborated. So I guess these kind of studies, even if the machine will be able to code better than any human being in 5 years from now, this will still be a skill that is relevant, because also the machine need to be maintained. Somebody needs to know how this works, because otherwise, how are these machines evolving? So, but not everybody needs to be the world best coder, but a basic understanding of these principles of this technology. This is absolutely required. So there is value in doing these kind of foundational studies also, being it engineering, being it computational science, IT, whatever it is. This will be absolutely critical. But what will take over more and more in importance is all these, what humans do as social beings, what humans do being a member of these large-scale socio-economic systems. It's around communicating, it's about relationship building, it's about trust, all these soft skills that are not so soft, they are becoming more and more critical, because as we mentioned already, the machine will be able to take more and more over the grunt work and the busy work. The one thing that I simply don't know, and probably no one else does, because it goes from, oh, we will have even more labor in future, to no, there will be no labor at all anymore. We see the whole range. Where will we actually land? Yeah, how many of the currently employed people will really be needed moving forward when we take away all this grunt work? I believe there will be other models emerging that will carry value in itself. And as almost as humanity, we will see next level of evolution, because what keeps us busy day in, day out is not necessarily creating value, but we have much more time moving forward on this stuff that can create value amongst human beings. So this was almost philosophical, not for me as an engineer, but
Wow.
this is the thought process
Yeah.
I have.
No, and you know what? It's so refreshing to hear this, Michael, right? Because there's no party line between me and you, right? We say what we think, and it's our own opinion, and it makes total sense. I agree with you. I think there is two or three things that are going to happen, which are going to accelerate this discussion. One is the population collapse discussion that is going on, and this is really important from a GDP perspective. And I think, everybody's favorite Elon hasn't not put enough focus on this, right? The second bit is quantum computing, and we know that with quantum, there is going to be a seismic shift in terms of the AI. And then there is the geopolitical piece, which is much more interesting, because actually whoever gets to artificial superintelligence, is what Eric Schmidt spoke about in Vancouver recently, does have a totalitarian advantage, which is the scary part for a lot of people. So I think you're spot on. I think we're very, very early. It's a germination stage. It reminds me of the early days of .com. And it also had its own casualties, right? Like there were companies like boo.com, which were doing 3D rendering, but the bit rate was 56 kilobytes on a download. That was never going to work. But if it came out today, who knows? It may have been successful. So there's so much that always evolves from this, yeah. So Michael, I just want to, like, in closing, ask you a couple of things, right? Like you've really articulated brilliantly well where you're at, where we're at, and taking it from Next Pharma. We've got a few events coming up for Next Pharma Summit. We've got one in Vienna, we've got one in Melbourne, and we've got one in Brussels, which Daria has just announced. In terms of what you would like to see covered as content, if you would like to see certain things being mentioned from the other pharma companies in the industry, because you spoke about us being as one, right? Which I always agree with. I think we work too much in silos. But if we came together as one, what is that content that you would love to see on stage for people to be able to present back in the next sort of few events that we're seeing?
That's an interesting question. And I was thinking about probably having, so two things. On the one hand, strategically, Dario is doing the right thing in diversitizing, I don't know, driving diversity in his offering. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has now one in Australia, one in Vienna coming up, then one in Brussels. And it started with only one Next Pharma Summit. I guess this will help with not growing this too big, because the culture of this event would suffer from it. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably 400-500 people is right size to keep it sufficiently cozy and close to help people navigate it. Yeah, so offering more of these kind of events with different specializations probably makes sense. However, it comes at the cost that we are again looking into these silos. How do we break that? The second part that I would probably think of, and I would like to see more, is that we have at least a few of industry speakers, people that come from somewhere else, not pharma. I know it's a pharma summit, it's a pharma event, but there's so much more to learn from banking, from aerospace, from tech, of course. Yeah, not making this a cross-industry conference, which is a completely different character, but in a very focused way, just inviting one or two people on stage that are not part of pharma, just to get inspired. And why I'm saying this, one of the standout presentations was also from Wayne Simmons.
Yes.
He came to the pharma industry rather late. He was also a professor for marketing in between, or he still is, I believe. He's a publishing author, and he's not coming from pharma initially. Yeah, and that was, you could see that he's looking at this stuff differently than we traditionally do, and I found that exceptionally inspiring also.
Yeah, and Wayne Simmons is someone I think we need to get more of, right? Like we need to get personas of people like that more into the industry who come in and bring that diversity of thought. And funnily, Wayne posts a lot on LinkedIn, and if you follow his content, some of that is obviously from his background, in the forces as well, and it really comes across in the structure of how he says stuff. So I'm a big fan. Michael, so everyone's a fan. If they want to kind of follow your content, how can the people kind of follow the best of you? What channels in terms of social? How can they how can they get in touch if they need to?
So the simple answer is they can all approach me through LinkedIn. That's always possible. And I'm enjoying also these after event follow-ups from people that were in the audience asking questions, didn't get hold of me at the event, but following up. I have quite a lot of people now that I'm regularly in touch with, that I got to know at these conferences initially, and we ever since stayed in touch. Yeah, so I enjoy this a lot. My virtual door through LinkedIn is always open. Otherwise, I have to say my job is keeping me busy. Yeah, I cannot.
Yeah. I was gonna say this is great. We can approach Michael whenever.
I cannot become a pharma influencer. No, for this I have a full-time job that I need to stay focused on. But what my next plans are, and I don't know if this is ever becoming reality. So for now, I have posted my award-winning speech, and I want to thank the audience in Dubrovnik once again for actually voting me as one of the 2 top-rated presentations there. That was a huge surprise. This year, I have put exceptionally more effort into this. I have to say, being inspired from Marco Andre, very concretely, I said, "Guy, I need to step up my game here. These boring PowerPoints that I was presenting the years before, that's not going to work anymore." So I have put a lot of effort into this. Luckily, it paid off, so that's great. But of course, I'm thinking about creating a series of postings out of this each one with different aspects that I was touching on during my presentation, because I had touched on multiple aspects, of course, of a global transformation to make it more consumable, more digestible, because people probably don't sit in front of their screen just 20 minutes watching and listening. Yeah, that's probably not happening. So this bite-sized content, I'm thinking about doing this. And I'm actually thinking about probably writing a book around this, because there's enough content that would easily make a book or for global transformation in large pharma organization. But that's early thinking. I don't know when and how I will find time for that, but I guess that would be fun also for me to do.
For sure, and I think AI can help, right? In terms of getting your notes down, that's what that would be for sure. And
We should not be
and I'm
shy. We should not be shy to say that we are using AI. Of course we do, and if we would not, that would be pretty stupid. Yeah, the thought process, the framework of what this machine is helping you then to articulate is still coming from your own IP. But not everybody is a brilliant writer. This thing is a brilliant writer if you ask it to be a brilliant writer. Yeah. And the content that you have here is becoming so much more engaging when you ask the machine to help. And with this is giving you kind of human superpower, right? I love it.
Yeah, I can see you in the Superman suit for sure. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. And I'm really looking forward to the listeners and the viewers getting this content. It's been it's been inspiring. So thank you so much. And yeah, maybe there's a chapter 2, huh?